When people think of the PSP, they usually remember it for portable versions of their favorite console franchises, countless JRPGs, and porn. Yeah, people used to watch porn on the PSP, I don't get it either. But if you were a Diablo fan back in the day and you wanted that dungeon crawling action in your pocket, the PSP could actually deliver, just not in the most obvious ways. Diablo itself never made it to Sony's handheld, so we had to settle for various clones. Some were closer than others, and some felt like glorified beat-em-ups with brain-dead action and the slightest hint of RPG stats. Still, a handful of titles scratched that itch quite effectively, even if none of them could actually dethrone the king. Let's check them out. If you were dying to play a proper dungeon crawler when the PSP was still new, the easiest place to start, and the one that actually tried to pass for Diablo on the go, was Untold Legends Brotherhood of the Blade. It was a PSP launch title, which meant it was boosted by the hype and carried the burden of being one of the first attempts to cram a full 3D action RPG into Sony's little shitbox. You pick one of the 4 standard RPG classes, the camera sits on top of you in that classic bird's eye view, and the game does everything a Diablo fan could ever want. Loot, level up, kill, repeat. The execution though wasn't perfect, as to be expected. The world was linear and repetitive, the writing was as exciting as one of my videos, and some bizarre control combinations reminded you that designers still couldn't perfectly remap a full hack-and-slash moveset into a controller layout. That said, the ad hoc multiplayer for up to 4 players was genuinely exciting in 2005. It felt like always having a LAN party ready to go, and the core loop of murder innocent creatures, loot their stuff, marginally increase your stats worked well enough to justify nostalgia for many people today. The sequel, Untold Legends The Warrior's Code, was the version of the franchise that tried to smooth out all the edges. Released about a year later, it learned from the complaints, somewhat. More classes, better controls, shorter load times, and a larger multiplayer system that actually added structured online play, rather than just local ad hoc sessions. The classes Guardian, Mercenary, Disciple, Prowler, Scout tried to offer distinct playstyles, though in practice the variety was underwhelming and the combat mechanics stripped down. What Warrior's Code did well though was polish. Combat felt a bit snappier, inventory screens were more intuitive, and the co-op gave the game replay value that the campaign itself lacked. If you just want to turn your brain off and kill some stuff, the sequel is the one to play. It's shinier and smoother. But if you want more RPG meat to your hack-and-slash experience, Brotherhood is definitely the one to get. So, Untold Legends was essentially a portable Champions of Norath clone. Dungeon Siege Throne of Agony, on the other hand, was a large successful attempt at shrinking the franchise down for a portable console without losing what made it special. Built specifically for the PSP by Supervillain Studios, Throne of Agony kept the Dungeon Siege DNA, with party customization, a more pronounced campaign, and loot-focused progression while refactoring the interface for the PSP's single analog stick control scheme. The game gave you a smaller party than the PC games. You'd pick a partner to travel with, and friends could join to make a 4-character team via ad hoc. A neat mechanic that made your playstyle feel slightly more tactical, while you also had unlockable cross-content stuff if you owned the PC expansion, a cheeky tie-in. Graphically, it tried to punch above the PSP's weight class and mostly pulled it off. Character models and environments looked rather moody, despite the cartoony art style, though the gameplay ended up a little repetitive and too easy after a few hours. Critics and players tended to agree this was one of the best PSP Diablo-likes out there, with a surprising number of systems and features for a game meant for a handheld console. And I agree as well, it's a pretty fun game, you should check it out. Now the superhero entries like X-Men Legends 2 and Marvel Ultimate Alliance are cheats in the discussion, only if you're being pedantic about ports or RPG fantasy settings. Mechanically, they're kissing cousins, or brothers if you're from Alabama, with squad-based action RPG combat, loot and power upgrades, and an overhead camera that encourages smashing through mobs like a super mutant force of nature. Vicarious Visions handled the PSP porting on several of them, producing some impressive technical feats. The roster is shrunken, but still hefty. Voice work and music survive the compression mostly intact, and the ability systems translate remarkably well to a handheld layout. X-Men Legends 2 even came out with extra exclusive characters and missions on the portable version, so it wasn't just a cut and paste job. The porting teams actually added content to make the on-the-go experience feel special, but the trade-offs are obvious and unavoidable. Maps are smaller, models are simpler, and load times are longer than your average bathroom break. But for anyone who wanted to bring the chaos and non-stop action of Marvel superheroes with them, this was the way to go. Now, diving deeper into controls and feel, Diablo on PC was built around pointing, clicking, and surviving carpal tunnel. On PSP, everything had to be rethought around a single analog stick, a handful of face buttons, and a short battery life. That meant designers often simplified the inventory systems with fewer item types and auto-leveling stat choices, while complex spellcasting was now single-button cooldowns or combos, leaning more on good, old-fashioned button mashing for the mindless joy of it. Where this succeeded, the result was immediate and fun. You could clear rooms fast, experiment with builds without lengthy menu micromanagement, and the multiplayer felt like instant party making. Where it failed, you noticed the lack of randomized dungeon variety and the sometimes shallow skill trees. Many PSP Diablo-likes were more like corridor-based beat-em-ups than procedural RPG loot fests. If what you loved about Diablo was the endlessly generated variety and economy of minute optimizations, the PSP clones gave you the vibe, but rarely the depth. So, which of these actually scratches that Diablo itch best on a modern replay? If you want the game that most closely feels like a proper RPG while still being tuned for the PSP, Dungeon Siege Throne of Agony usually tops the list. It's the most thoughtfully adapted, with good party and loot systems and a rather high Metacritic score for a PSP RPG of its time. If you prefer grab-and-go sessions with friends and like the idea of slightly junky dungeon crawling, The Untold Legend Spare, Brotherhood for nostalgia, Warrior's Code for a slightly more polished time are fine choices and capture the mid-2000s handheld spirit. And if you're still not affected by Marvel fatigue, X-Men Legends 2 and Marvel Ultimate Alliance or PSP will give you a huge roster of muscular men in tight suits to play around with. And that's all I have to say about that. What a way to end this video. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stuff. You know how it goes. Have a great day, and until next time, take care and have fun.